Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I am here today to film a Friday Reads video where I wrap up the week in reading and just anything else interesting that has been going on. I did finish 2 books this week and I have some other interesting things going on in my reading life. We'll get to those when we get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. First, I want to say thank you for all of the kind words and concern. In my last Friday Reads video, I mentioned that we were waiting on test results for Jamie, and I've mentioned in my last 2 Friday Reads videos that things had been a little bit stressful and it had impacted my reading for sure, and it continues to impact my reading. So people picked up on that. I mean, I guess it wasn't that hidden. So there were a lot of kind words, and thank you for that. And just as an update, I did post about this on Instagram a couple of days ago, but we got the test results, and basically the story is Jamie started getting bloody noses a few weeks ago, and they started with some simpler treatments, hoping that it would be like an infection, or her blood pressure was a little high, so we started doubling her blood pressure medicine. Those didn't fix it. In fact, the bloody noses got worse. And at that point, they had to check, and there's a tumor. And we were waiting for the pathology results. So it is a type of tumor that is usually treatable with radiation. Her age and her existing heart condition is a bit of a concern, but we'll see. So we do have an appointment to get her looked at later in March. And I'm trying my best not to stress until we get there. I mean, of course, there is stress and anxiety. I'm sure you can understand and appreciate for both Joel and I. It is difficult to have to deal with another dog who has a tumor in their head, no less. So soon after we lost Guinness because of a brain tumor. But, you know, this is a very different situation. His tumor was much more it was in a very bad location. It was very aggressive. So the complicating factor here is Jamie's age and her existing heart condition. But we'll see. You know, I'm going to try not to stress. There will be stress, but I'm going to try not to stress. And I am going to be thinking about videos that I can film in advance for that week, because the week that we are there, we don't know how long we're going to need to be there, because they're going to have to do their own exam and figure out if they can treat and how they would like to. And, you know, we might end up being there for a week. So I'm going to try to think about some videos that I can film ahead. Maybe not many. I don't know. We'll see how the next 2 weeks or so go. But that's something that is coming up. And since you were also kind about that, I feel like I kind of owe an explanation. I don't owe it, but I guess I like to do things a little bit upfront because I don't like to feel like I'm hiding things. And, you know, I understand and appreciate anybody who thinks their personal life is personal, but this is something that Joel and I are both going to be managing. It's going to be difficult. That could potentially impact output in videos. I'm going to try not to let it do that, but just FYI, that's something that's going on. And like I said, I'm trying my best not to be stressed and upset and anxious about it. We're going to see. We will find out. I was chatting with somebody on Instagram whose dog had the same type of tumor that Jamie has. And it's difficult on the one hand because you don't know that you'll be facing the same situation. We don't know what treatment for Jamie will look like compared to treatment for their dog. But it is helpful to hear from somebody who has been through something like that. So that has been very good as well. And it'll be weird being back at WSU where they have an animal hospital. This is actually where Jamie had her heart surgery 9 years ago, I guess, 10 years ago, coming up on 10 maybe. I don't know. What is time? That was before she lived with us. We were in the adoption process. So actually when we talked to them, we had to let them know she's actually had surgery there, but under a different name. So they had to find her records for that. It's the same place we took Guinness in December of 2021. It's a lovely town. I guess I hadn't really ever thought I wanted to go back there specifically for this reason, but you know, there is a really nice bookstore. I wore my t-shirt for that store today. The Book People of Moscow. Moscow, Idaho is a town that's really close to WSU's campus. It's like the Washington and Idaho border, and it's a really cute bookstore. I found some Franklin Library books the last time I was there, so I don't think that's going to repeat. But it is a really lovely store. We had a lovely chat with the bookseller who was there that day. And I love, this is one of my favorite bookstore t-shirts. It has a really great exterior of the store. And I love that they put it on this t-shirt. If this is the same t-shirt that they have when we get there, I might buy another one in a different color just because I love this t-shirt so much. So anyway, silver linings. That's kind of the way I'm thinking about this. The only other thing that has gone on this week is I did manage to watch Tar. If you follow along, you know I am sort of obsessed with the Academy Awards. That's going to play in with one of the books that I finished this week. So this year has been a little bit difficult because for the first time since the pandemic, a lot of the Academy Awards nominated movies didn't jump to streaming. You have to kind of wait for them to be available at an affordable rate or just appear on streaming. So Tar finally got away from like the premium rental level and was down to $5.99. So I rented it this week and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it. It seems like every gay man on Twitter, although I'm not really on Twitter anymore. I do still occasionally check Twitter, but I don't post anything. Every gay man on Twitter seems to be completely in love with Tar, and I'm not in love with it. I thought it was very good, and I thought Cate Blanchett was very good, but not obsessed with it to the level that a lot of other people are. But anyway, let's get into the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. Like I said, I finished 2 books over the past week, and one of them, I had mentioned in my last Friday Reads video that I was going to put the physical book I was reading to the side just for like a Saturday or a Sunday morning. And I did, so I could read selected poems of Gwendolyn Brooks. I got this from the library. One of the prompts for Montana Book Company's 2023 reading challenge is to read a book of poems by a poet who you haven't engaged with before. I was talking to Erica from The Broken Spine because I can use Maya Angelou for this prompt, or I figured there's another prompt for reading a book that has been banned in your state. So I Googled books that have been banned in the state of Montana. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is on there. So I was talking to Eric and saying, well, if I use Maya Angelou for the banned book, then I can't use her for the poetry prompt because then I will have engaged with the work of hers and she doesn't qualify. And Erica told me about Gwendolyn Brooks. While we were talking, I Googled Gwendolyn Brooks. Here is a photo of her on the back. It's a library book, so it's a little shiny. There she is. And I saw that she is the first Black author to win a Pulitzer Prize in any category. I think she's the first Black person to win a Pulitzer Prize in any category. It just happens that she did it for poetry. So she doesn't qualify for my Pulitzer Prize project, where I'm trying to read all of the books that have won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction, but she is sort of adjacent to it. There's a bit of like Pulitzer lore here that's really interesting. So obviously I was hooked. So I found this, sat down, read it. I can't remember if it was on Saturday or Sunday. We slept in on one of those days, so we lost the morning, but it was very needed. We needed that. So I read this and I liked it. Here's my problem. It's nothing to do with Gwendolyn Brooks. It's everything to do with me. I didn't really understand a lot of what was going on in here. And I think under different circumstances, I would have sat with each poem for longer to think about it a little more and try to figure it out. But things being the way they are, I just continued reading, and end result, I liked all of the poems in here, but I don't really think I understood a lot. And that is kind of why I keep poetry at a remove for myself. It's this exact feeling where it's like, I liked this. I didn't understand this. That sometimes happens to me a lot. And again, not a fault of Gwendolyn Brooks. I think she's fantastic. Clearly, she is a very good poet. I think there's a lot of talent and skill in writing here. And one thing that's interesting is usually when I'm reading a poem, I can sort of find the rhythm where I can read it almost as if it's prose, and that kind of helps me understand it. I couldn't really find a rhythm to these. They don't want to be read like prose. Like sometimes the different lines of a poem, if you read them like prose, they sound like it. And I think that actually is very helpful to me, but you can't do that with this collection of poems. So I really liked it. I didn't understand it. But I got a prompt done for the Montana Book Company's Reading Challenge, and I read an author who achieved something pretty cool. And again, there she is. She was born in 1917. She won the Pulitzer Prize in 1950 or somewhere around the 1950s. I'm not going to look for it, but I think her biography ended up being the most interesting thing about this to me because I didn't really understand the poems. But that's me. That's entirely me. I understand it's not Gwendolyn Brooks. It's me. I'm the problem. That you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I finished that, and then let's talk about the other physical book that I had put to the side to read that. It's The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. So if you follow along, you know for the last 2 weeks I have not made a lot of progress in this, and this was a buddy read I was doing with Joel. He's done. He's been done for a while, and I've been stalled. And actually, I don't think I made much of any progress. I think I read 2-3 pages of this book this week, and I really need to get back to it, but I've been struggling because every time I put it back up, pick it back up, there's a sort of resistance to it. And I finally, I think yesterday or maybe the day before, realized what it is. Because I like the book, I'm enjoying it so far, but every time I pick it up, it feels like a chore, and I haven't really been able to figure out why that is. Well, what I realized is, because this is part of my Pulitzer Prize project, I'm reading this because it won a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. I mean, I wanted to read it anyway, but the Pulitzer Prize project is sort of my excuse to finally get around to it. But because I'm reading it for that, I'm also taking notes as I work my way through. And it's a cumbersome process. I actually enjoy doing it. I really like thinking about it and trying to mark themes that repeat and things like that. I don't do it for every book that I read, so when I do, normally I appreciate it, and it gives me the sort of nerdy escapist feel that I enjoy. That is actually the thing that's making this feel like a chore right now. The fact that I'm taking notes, the fact that almost every page I note something down or underline something in the book. Because this is a used book that's not in great condition, I've actually been underlining and making little notes and annotations in the book as I go along. And it's that is making it feel like a chore. I'm not just rolling along with the book. I'm like actively, it takes work to get through this book. And that is the thing that has been making this feel like such an ordeal. And, you know, I named my channel Supposedly Fun because so many things in life are supposed to be fun and we make them a chore. And it's mainly a reminder to me for like the channel. It's like, if I get stressed about something to do with like, oh my God, I need to do a video today or anything like that, calm down. It's supposed to be fun. And reading is supposed to be fun. So if taking the notes is the thing that's taking the fun out of this right now, I'm going to try to attack this again without the notes. I'm going to let that go for now. And I think it works okay because this is a book where there's a lot out there about this book and the author's work. So if I don't so actively take notes, it'll be fine. If I had skipped taking notes for, say, Now in November or His Family, the one that actually, my video for His Family is coming this weekend. So I'm going to post this Friday Reads on a Saturday like I usually do, and Sunday I'm going to schedule my Pulitzer Prize deep dive for His Family. So there's a little tease, it's coming. But anyway, if I had done the process of skipping the notes for either of those books, it would have been difficult because there's not a lot of information about those books out there. So I kind of had to rely on my own work, but it's not the case with John Steinbeck. I've actually even read John Steinbeck before. I've only read his novellas, not the, big books. This is the first of his big books that I will have read. So I'm just going to try to attack it again this weekend. Tomorrow will be a little bit busy. We have to get up early because Jamie has haircuts, we have haircuts, and Joel and I are probably going to try to film our February reading wrap-up, which I will then edit next week. So that'll be coming. But point being, tomorrow I probably won't have a lot of time to sit down with this book, but hopefully Sunday I will re-attack The Grapes of Wrath, slow down on the notes. Maybe if something really interesting happens, I'll note it down, but I won't actively sit there with the pen and my bookmark, which is an index card that I have been taking notes on. I won't be doing it relentlessly. I'm going to calm down about that. And I think that's really going to be helpful. And I should have looked before I started filming this, but spoiler for my March book haul coming up before we get to the audiobook that I finished and the audiobook that I am currently reading. And I told myself in 2023 I was going to be better about noting names down, and I already failed at this. So I apologize. Somebody told me about Sonora Bab when I was reading The Grapes of Wrath, and I will go back and look for the person's name, but I don't have it right now. So I got myself a copy of Sonora Bab's novel, which is called Whose Names Are Unknown. So the deal is, Sonora Bab was working for, I'm trying to remember, she was working for a Farm Security Administration camp in California. She's originally from the Oklahoma Panhandle herself, and she spent a lot of time interviewing people who had made that exodus from Oklahoma to California. And she wrote down their stories, and she handed them to her supervisor. She used those stories to write this novel, Whose Names Are Unknown. What she didn't know was that her supervisor was handing her notes to John Steinbeck, and then John Steinbeck used them to help inform his writing in The Grapes of Wrath, and his book was published first. And once it became such a wild runaway success, even before it won the Pulitzer Prize, it was a best-selling book, publishers didn't want to touch Sonora Bab's novel because they said we can't have two books about the same thing. So they passed on it, and it went away. She had other writings in her lifetime. I don't remember when she died. Let me see if I can find it quickly. It does not say, but this was only published in 2004, I believe, by the University of Oklahoma Press. And I think she may have died by then, or she died like immediately after. That's my memory of the timing, but obviously it's a little hazy. So I am going to try to read this as an addendum to the project. Just to get, I don't want my Grapes of Wrath discussion to be taken over by Sonora Bab, but I think there's something really interesting going on here as well. And I think it would be interesting to read her perspective on the story as well. So that's sort of just a quick spoiler for my March book haul. And yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to do in addition to The Grapes of Wrath. Full perspective on the topic, and maybe dig a little further into... I think in the introduction it says that it's unclear if Steinbeck even used her notes. So it'll be interesting to look a little further into that and kind of see what went on. So let's talk about audiobooks. I finished Oscar Wars, A History of Hollywood in Gold, Sweat, and Tears by Michael Schulman, and the second half of the book followed pretty exactly what I had talked about in my last Friday Reads video, where this book is sold as the story of the Academy Awards through some of its controversies in campaigning and just in general. I heard an interview with the author on a podcast called Little Gold Men. It wasn't even really an interview. He joined them for an episode, and it just so happened that that was right after the Andrea Riceborough controversy had happened. Andrea Riceborough used very unorthodox social media campaigns, tactics to get herself a Best Actress nomination this year. So the timing just worked that he was there in the episode where they were going to be discussing that, and it was interesting. So anyway, it was a really fun, lively, funny discussion that focused on a lot of the sort of backstabbing and infighting and controversies, and it made it sound like it was going to be looking at the Academy through those. And it does. I mean, it's looking at controversies and, infighting and feuds and things like that. But it's much more a history of the Academy Awards, and it's surprisingly dry, especially considering the conversation that he was having about the book. The conversation he had about the book was more fun than the book. Being someone who really does like Academy history, I still appreciated it, but it definitely was not the fun book I thought I was getting. It's a lot more dry. And, it's fine. I liked it, but it wasn't the fun book I thought I was going to be getting to. So I finished that earlier this week. And then for 2 or 3 days, I really had a hard time finding another audiobook. Everything I looked at didn't seem appealing. For like a hot 5-6 hours, I was even thinking, I think I'm in the mood for a dramatic book. I should look for something that's not going to feel like escapist. And then I looked at a bunch of options for that, and nothing seemed appealing. So I caught up on my podcasts and just watched some YouTube videos and things like that, and just wasn't getting into an audiobook. Yesterday, I mentioned this to Joel. I'm just really not into any of my audiobook options and not finding anything that seems appealing. So Joel said, well, can I recommend something? And I said, well, you can recommend something. I can't promise it'll sound appealing to me. So he said, oh, well, okay. And then 5 minutes later, he kind of came back and was like, but did you see The Golden Spoon? I was like, no. What's The Golden Spoon? So it's a book that we had access to on audio, and it's described in a couple of ways, not all of which are entirely accurate. It's that thing where marketing invokes a popular book or another popular author to sell a book. So there were comparisons to Agatha Christie. There were comparisons to Locked Room Mysteries. And I'm blanking on what the other one is that's in the description of the book. None of them fit. The only one that fits is that it's described as a sort of Great British Baking Show whodunit. That is accurate. So I'm halfway through at this point, and I'm actually really liking it. Joel crushed it. He did a really good job recommending a book to me. He knows what I like. What can I say? So the premise is that there is a baking show. Go figure. And it is very similar to Bake Off, except the cast of contestants is half what it would be on a season of Bake Off. And it takes place in the United States, and all of the judges and contestants are American instead of British. It takes place in Vermont, and actually it takes place in a town in Vermont that is close to a place in Vermont my family used to go to on vacation every fall, which is neither here nor there. It's just kind of fun that it's close to a part of Vermont that I have been. Well, the estate is named Grafton, and there is a town in Vermont named Grafton, so I'm making the assumption that that's where it is. Maybe that's inaccurate. I should clarify. Anyway, the host is almost a Mary Berry type, but only in that she's an elderly lady who has had a long baking career. She has been the sole host of the show in the past. I actually started reading the description, and I only got the paragraph that compares it to like Agatha Christie and Locked Room Mysteries. By the way, so far there has been no Locked Room Mystery, but whatever. And those other books, and saw that it was like a bake-off thing. And then I stopped reading the description after that because I figured this would be a fun book to go into cold, and I have really enjoyed that. So I'm not going to go into the plot very much. If you want to read it, I'll let you discover it yourself, because that is something that has been fun for me. But I will say she has been hosting this show by herself, and this year they have introduced a co-host who is not a Paul Hollywood type, but it is a male. So there has been a change in that. The show is hosted at her family estate. So like Bake Off, there is an old manor house, except, old manor houses in the United States are very different from old manor houses in the UK. And they build a tent outside the house, which is where the baking takes place. But it's called Bake Week. So there's 1 week and then the show is over. And the opening scene teases a murder, but one of the things I've really liked about this book, and again, I'm really going to try not to give much about the plot away, is that it takes a very slow approach to the actual crime, and therefore the whodunit. It spends a lot of time letting you get to know the contestants, letting you see odd things that are happening as the contest gets underway. Like little mishaps, things that seem to indicate sabotage is going on in the contest itself, and things like that. One of my concerns, and again, I don't want to give a lot away, is a lot of the characters speak to you in the first person. So I'm a little worried that in the second half, there will be that sort of twist where you'll find out that somebody has been lying to you. And I don't know how I will react to that if that does end up being the case. But I really appreciate the slow approach. And that's why I feel like comparisons to Agatha Christie don't really hold up. Obviously, there has been no Locked Room at this point, like I said. Because the classic form is in the first chapter, you are quickly introduced to all of the suspects, and then the murder happens within the first 2 to 3 chapters. And this, as I said, has taken a lot more time, given you a lot more time with each person and to get to know the situation and allow things to progress. And that feels nice. I'm really enjoying that. And also, my typical complaint with current mystery thrillers is that they are using weird psychological tactics to try to trick you, and you have unreliable narrators, and there are so many twists, and it just wears me down. So this feels refreshing, and I'm really enjoying it so far. So Joel did well. He did well. So I'm halfway through, and I'm going to leave it at that because, again, I don't want to give a whole lot away. I think the things that I have told you are enough of a tease that you can decide if you want to read it or not, and then you can jump into it and discover things for yourself like I have been, which has been fun. So I will finish that. I'm going to dive back into The Grapes of Wrath. I still have a pile of library books here underneath the books that I just left on top. And I need to figure out what I'm going to do with those because one of them is due back on March 3rd, which is today, actually, and I haven't even started it yet. So I got to figure out what I'm doing with that. That'll be a project for this weekend as well, because I can't renew that book anymore. I already renewed it, and it's, I'm at my limit. So I'll figure that out, and I'll dive back into The Grapes of Wrath. I'm going to finish The Golden Spoon. I don't know what my audio will be after that. I'm going to figure it out. And this weekend, Joel and I are going to film our February reading wrap-up, and in that, I'll talk about some of my March reading plans. Obviously, you kind of know one of them, but there will also be an E.M. Forster read-along book. I'll talk about all of that in the February wrap-up, so stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for my His Family Pulitzer Deep Dive, which will be posting tomorrow if you're watching this the day that it goes live. But what is time on social media? You could be watching this days later. So it might be available already. You can go look for it. Who knows? Who knows? Anyway, as always, I really appreciate your time. And again, I really appreciate all of the kind words and comments. The support has really meant a lot. And we'll see what happens. So no use talking about it too much right now. But again, your support has really been appreciated. Stay tuned. I'm going to try to figure out what I can do to film videos ahead for the week that we will be, possible week that we will be at WSU. But more on that as it develops. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.